please?
We're in Herzliya.
Oh, vacation.
Shabbos away by friends, yes.
Great. Have a good time.
Done. Okay. Then we're going to be learning. You hear me, Aaron?
Yeah, I hear you quite well. I have
Okay,
muted
perfect.
myself.
Oh, thank you. Okay. So we're learning the Sikha from the Rebbe from Shabbos Parshas Lech Lecha Yud Mar Cheshbon, the 10th Mar Cheshbon, Tavshin Rav, 1950. 1950. It hasn't been 1951 yet. So the Rebbe says like this. Okay, you have to remember this talk. The Rebbe said before he officially accepted leadership. So the Rebbe accepted leadership a few months later that year in the winter of 1951, and this is the fall of 1950. So going into 51, so a few months before. The Rebbe says like this. The Rebbe says that my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, says in one of his talks. The Admar Hazakin Amar, the Alter Rebbe said, a person has to live with the times. And when the Hasidim didn't know what the Rebbe meant, the Alter Rebbe says a person has to live with the times. What does it mean a person has to live with the times? So when so the Hasidim are trying to figure it out. So Nizgala Hapirsha Adei Hamaril Achim Shalbeinu Hazakin. The Alter Rebbe had a brother called the Maril, Rabbi Yehuda Leib. So he was like the Alter Rebbe's assistant as well. So he tells the Chassidim that what the Alter Rebbe means is that Shakavani Hilachis in Parshas Shavua. A person has to live with the Parsha of the week. It means a person reads the Parsha of the week, learns the Parsha of the week, like Aaron, you've been promoting, and you have to live with it. It shouldn't be something that you just read. It should be something that becomes part of your week. So the Rebbe says like this: Hashavua shal Parshas Bereshis. When it comes to Parshas Bereshis, which is the first parsha we read after Simchas Torah, so he b'chlaluse shvua sameach. It's a happy week. Afrei lechavach, the Rebbe says in Yiddish. Af shesayfa parsha einin noim kol kach. Even though the end of the parsha isn't so good, so nice, nitazei geschmack, not so pleasant, because God talks about how the people didn't live up to His expectations, so to say. Lahavdil. Hashavua shal Parshas Noach. Then comes Noach. Hushavua offer v'otziv. A kalmanut vach. It's a kind of a depressing week. Of course, we're talking about the flood. Hashavua shal Parshas Noach. Hushavua shalomdim by oidus hamabel. We learn about the flood. So that's obviously Dara Flaga. We learn about the generation after the flood that tries to rebel against God with building the Tower of Babylon. V'kayotzibay. V'ilo hashavua. But this week, shal Parshas Lech Lecha. This is a really happy week. Why? The Emes Afrei Lechavach, the Rebbe says in Yiddish, a really happy week. Why is it a really happy week? So the Rebbe says, Kivan Shalom Din Bay Oidis Kivan Shebechol Yoimi Maisa Shavu Chaim Avram Avinu. Because every day, hey Sharna, every day we're living with our father Avram. So that's a good week. So the Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe says one has to live with the times. So if you're living with the times, we're living this week is a good week. We're living with Avram Avinu. HaYehudi HaRisha, in the first Jew, that opened the valves of self-sacrifice, meaning to say that until Avram Avinu, that was a complicated thing. Today, it's maybe a little easier to have self-sacrifice because Avram Avinu did it. And he gave it over as an inheritance for all the Jewish people going forward. So on page 67, starting the third paragraph. The Rebbe says, to point out, this that we say that Avram Avinu gave over self-sacrifice to his descendants, it's also it means to converts. It means a convert may say, if I'm not a direct blood descendant of Avram, maybe I don't have that Mesiras Nefesh. So the Rebbe says, no, Gerim also have it. Kivan. We know halachically that a ger also is connected to Avram. V'nikram b'nei Avram, they're called the children of Avram, like the Rambam writes. The Rambam had a famous yeshuva tshuva, a famous responsa to, I think his name was Avadia the Ger, who wrote to the Rambam many questions about the Rambam's views of converts. So he writes that even a convert is connected directly to Avram Avinu. I saw Divrei Yishalmi, based on what the Yishalmi says. Shagam Gerim Yochim Leim Elavisenu. When a convert talks, he's allowed to say to my forefathers. What do you mean, my forefathers? I'm a convert. Because the halach is Kivan Avram Avinu Av L'chol HaGerim. Avram is the father of all the converts. Therefore, the Rebbe is saying it's not only a schus, it's not only a merit, it's also an obligation. That if a convert says, well, I'm not a descendant of Avram directly by blood, so maybe I don't have the power to have self-sacrifice. The Rebbe says, no. Even a ger, even a convert or a descendant of converts can't exclude him or herself from the obligation of Mesiras Nefesh, because also you've been empowered by Avram. The Rebbe says, Ad kan the Rebbe says, this concludes the talk that my father-in-law said. So my father-in-law, meaning the previous Rebbe, said in one of his talks that the week of they were supposed to live with the parsha, and that the parsha of Lech Lecha is a happy parsha because we live with Avram, and Avram gave us the ability to have self-sacrifice. So the Rebbe says like this: Sif Beis, Al Pi Zeh Yesh Leim, and based on this one could say, Shashavu Shel Achri Parshas Lech Lecha Hu Bevadei Shavuos Sameach. So if the first week that we live with Avram is a happy week, so the second week, meaning Parshas Vayera, is surely a happy week. Why? Because now Avram elevates to a higher level of completeness because he's after circumcision. We know that by Avram circumcising himself, he had a much greater elevation than he had before. Page 68. The Rebbe continues that even before circumcision, even before God even asked Avram to leave his father's home and land, Avram was on a great level before. It wasn't like he was on a low level. Like my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe said, the Sicha, the Simchas Torah Tavshin Yud, in the Sicha that the Rebbe said a year before. It means the Rebbe is bringing Lech Lecha 1950, 1949. His father-in-law was still alive, and he bring that Simchas Torah, and he said, Avram Avinu haya oz Yehudi ben Shivim v'chamesh. When Avram Avinu left his father's home, so to say, to Canaan, he was already a Jew, 75 years old. He wasn't a young man. Yehudi balachuzais. He's a person who's who, like the Rebbe says in English, a possessor. He possessed qualities.
You're saying he was Jewish? I thought they weren't Jewish until from Egypt.
When we say the Jewish people had to go through an additional conversion before Matan Torah, but what we call as the Yehudi Rishon, the first Jew, is Avram Avinu.
But he wasn't a Jew per se, was he?
We consider him the Yehudi Rishon, the first Jew. That's how he's considered. The Rambam goes into details about how we define Avram Avinu's being, but Avram Avinu is the first Jew. But he was definitely a possessor. He says in English, a possessor meaning a person who had qualities. Balabas al hanagasav. He was in control of his behaviors. I mean, at 75, he was already a person who's accomplished things. And he reached the max he could do on his own. Every person has a max at some point that you could reach. That this is you've reached your potential. Like we learned in the Mimer on Sunday night, that Avram reached what's called Seichel Hanela Mikol Rayin, the intellect that's beyond any understanding or any idea. It means that's how deep he was able to reach him. You know, the Rambam describes how he went deeper and deeper in himself, and he used his kidneys to really learn and study and to understand Hashem. And he also knew Torah. Was Nemerloi, and only after he became a complete person to his limitations, God told him the tzivui, the commandment, Lech Lecha mi'aretzecha, you must leave your land, meaning to say your comfort zone, your father's home. This halis l'dargan said you have an ability to go even higher. Well, and once he leaves at 99, he left at 75. But at 99, it's Sav al Milam. Then he gets commanded to do circumcision. Shemizem Muvan, Goidel Milas Haflaha Dargish Shegila Ademilas. The Rebbe is saying, so we see that if Avram Avinu reached his max of his own abilities when he was 75, and then God gave him the ability to go even further when he was 75 to go to Eretz Canaan. And at 99 years old, he commanded him to do mitzvah smila, and he says, now you will be complete. So we can imagine that he reached a really, really high level when it came to the next week's parsha, or the end of this week's parsha, when it comes to Avram already being circumcised. But the Rebbe says the ideas like this. What is the Rebbe trying to say? Everything that Avram Avinu, our father, had before he was commanded and did the commandment of Milah, of circumcision. He did that with his own abilities. They were all levels that were in the boundaries of a creation, meaning Avram was a creation or a nivra. A nivra of a creation has its mugbal, has limitations. So he reached the max of his limitations. Masha'enkin Mila, what happened? What was it given to Avram when he had circumcision? He was able to bring down great lights. The Rebbe says that was much greater than anything in the system of creation. This is a concept of Chassidus, that he was able to bring down lights that traditionally a person on his own would never be able to bring down, or her own. It comes from.
They all hinge on cutting off a little piece of flesh. It doesn't make sense to me.
No, I understand, but the Rambam holds halachically that women are considered circumcised. So we have to assume that once the mitzvah was given to Avram for circumcision, so Sarai, or Sarah, when she went through the transition of her name at that time, got that elevation as well. Because we know clearly halachically it applies. Where do we know that? We know that it says that someone who's not circumcised cannot eat from certain sacrifices, like the Pesach sacrifice. Women are not excluded. It's not just because they technically can't do it, because the Torah says halachically, command them all as if they're circumcised. So it means to say that the elevation that they get doesn't have to be done through a physical act, but it's given to them in a gift in another way. So the Rebbe says that it's given to them as a gift. There are great lights that can come on through the service of a person. They come from above as a gift. Like it says, we find other places that God circumcises things that are not so much, say, physical. Like it says, God will circumcise your heart. So here the Rebbe explains, answers your question. The Milah, circumcision, is not that you're bringing something down by the act of circumcision. You're getting rid of something that is preventing you from taking in the light. The Rebbe says you're taking off your hasaras, you're taking off, the word hasaras means to remove. Hamasach, the screen or the blockage. V'davar hameneh, the thing that's preventing you from getting this light. Hasaras ha'arla, when you take off the foreskin. Shemitzad the klipa, the foreskin is a part of the klipa of the negative force. And as long as a man has that, he's connected to klipa. When you get rid of it, then you are a vessel to get the blessing of circumcision. Like it says, God will circumcise your heart. This is the preparation. That it will come down automatically. The great light that comes from above. And the Rebbe continues, we see something similar, what we've learned in Tanya, that his galas talumas chachman nitzusim va'oris al yonim shayikvushim begalas beklipa, that there's also been great wisdoms. The Rebbe doesn't say what he's referring to, but great ideas of chachma that were captured by the forces of klipa. That why do the angels come down to hear what humans have to say about Torah? Humans are seemingly on a much lower level than the angels, because there's great lights that were captured in this world, and when the Jewish people break it through learning Torah, so it reveals these great lights that only through human participation are these lights able to be elevated, and therefore the angels want to come and listen to this Torah. The Rebbe continues, V'yesh l'ha'isef, one could add, Sha'ili shenase, Aidei Amila, with the elevation that Avram got through removing the blockage and God gifting him with the lights that happened through circumcision, are tremendously greater. Legamri, page 69, it's almost as if a person's born again. Just like a child is born, is a new entity. So birth is also connected to the infinite, like it's brought down in Chassidus. Similar to that is Avram is a person when he gets circumcision. The Rebbe is saying, therefore, what's the bottom line? From this, we see the great joy we're going to have next week when it's Parshas Vayera. The greatness that he's going to get in his light and revelation through removing the negativity and being blessed with the lights of Milah. And we're going to take the simcha throughout the weeks following that, throughout the year. Just like Simchas Torah gives joy for the year, so too next week, once we introduce the mitzvah of Milah, which starts really on the 7th reading of Lech Lecha, so then there's an additional joy that's added because we're living with that joy. The point is that the Rebbe says we have to live with the week, so we're living with that joy. Like my father-in-law said, they know Simchas Torah is an encompassing energy, and it gives us encompassing energy throughout the year. Okay, Sif Gimel. How does one get to the gift of circumcision? How does a person get to that extra light? So the Rebbe answers, to have the revelation of the great lights, he's kalusam, that the idea of its revelation is like a new birth. The Rebbe answers, in order to be worthy of a gift of great lights, you have to, this is the foundation of Chassidus, you have to get a little uncomfortable. You have to do Lech Lecha, you have to leave your land. If you want to get encompassing great lights, you need to get out of your limitations to your abilities. Even if you have holy boundaries, which means within the laws of halacha, sometimes you have to get out of those limitations as well. You surely have to get out of the boundaries of your animal soul. And how do you get out of the boundaries of your animal soul? Is you have to open up the code of the Jewish law and see what the halacha is you're supposed to do in certain situations. And then you have to learn the books of Musar, the Musar philosophy that helps a person with the struggle of their animal soul. And through that, a person will understand that if you have to decide between living a life of spirituality and holiness or a life of material, so through studying Torah and the Shulchan Aruch, and especially the books of Musar, you'll understand that Gashmis has no real value. Like he says in Yiddish, the Rebbe says, Gashmis is garnished. Gashmis is nothing. Uvemela, if that's the case, you could get out of your limitations that your animal puts on you, because the animal is taking you and drawing you towards material things. So when you realize material ideas is not the main thing, so you walk away from that. When we call sheked, even surely, you go out of the limitations, not just the animal soul, but the limitations of your body. That if your body has urges for things, you're not going to act on it if it's against the Shulchan Aruch. But to go out of your limitations of holiness, the Rebbe says, that's another whole exercise. And what does that mean? We're pratis. So now the Rebbe is going to explain what's an example of what it means when it says a person must get out of their limitations of holiness. When it comes to Torah study, so a person can have also their limitations of holiness. And the person may say, I can open up the Shulchan Aruch, and the Shulchan Aruch is and say, I don't have to study all day. I could be a supporter of Torah. If you want to know technically where I could put a check on did I learn Torah, the halacha says if I learn one halacha, one perek, one chapter of halacha in the morning and one chapter of halacha in the evening, I'm yotzei. I did what I have to do. Masbik hashir shlachvei tefillah. I could sit down by a small class, a short class after davening. I could put check. I learned. Masbik limud lo yigiyas nefesh v'yiyas basar. Nowhere does it say Shulchan Aruch I have to toil at my learning. I could just study and then and without any challenge. Masbik limud nigud Torah. I could just learn the revealed parts of Torah. My chasher lo limud chassidus. Where does it say in Shulchan Aruch I must learn chassidus? Right? That's boundaries. So a person can have boundaries and say, you want me to be a good Jew technically? It's easier to be a technically good Jew. That obviously you have to get out of those boundaries. And when it comes to davening,
so Rabbi, that's what you mean when you say a person has to get beyond those halakhic boundaries, not just doing what's going to get you by, but doing what would be more. Taking
absolutely, exactly. That's exactly what the Rebbe is saying. It's not trying to be yotze, not trying to get by with your responsibility, but to invest yourself in it. That's in the study of Torah. When it comes to davening, the person may claim, Maspik Torah, the person may say, let's say I come halachically to the shul in middle of davening. So I open up the Shulchan Aruch. What's the Shulchan Aruch say I have to do? I can skip most of the beginnings of davenings because I want to join the minyan. I could cut out 3/4 of the davening. Right? The main thing is to daven with the minyan. Even though I kind of plan it that way, right? Let's not fool ourselves. I could chop through. Litchoin means to chop. I could chop through the words of davening fast. The Rebbe says, broken nachanan, totally broken. The loy pirsha milas, not thinking about what I'm saying. Gam maspik is also good halachically. Pirsha milas gam loy isboinus lefini me'ata oimed. And not just, the Rebbe says, not knowing the translation, without contemplating who you're standing in front of. You don't even recognize you're talking to God. Daiva hoiser. And how do I prepare myself? Like it says, the Mishnah says. So how could I prepare myself, like to put my headspace in it? Zusammenlegen die Hand. I just have to position my hands. You want to know? You want me to prepare myself for davening? I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna make a movement to my hands like a servant would do. As long as my hands are in the proper position, my mind can run. I have the look of a prayer, of a person who's praying. So that's when it comes to davening, a person wants to be yotze. When it comes to giving charity, the person could say when it has boundaries, I'll open up the book of the code of law. Torah says clearly, what are my limitations? How much tzedakah should I be giving? This is how much I have to give biblically. This is that I have to give more according to rabbinic responsibilities. Nowhere does it say I have to give more. If I'm going to give more than 1/20 of my profit, not only am I not supposed to give, I'm not obligated to give. It says clearly, a person should not give more than 1/5. If a person wants to give a tremendous amount of tzedakah, one should not give more than a chaimish, than 1/5. And the person also says, why do I have to be a person that's more strict than the Torah? Like the Gemara in the Yishalmi says, you should just try to keep what the Torah tells you to do, and you're good enough. Well, that's alone a challenge, and you're asking me to go out of my boundaries of what the Torah wants or demands. Do I have to be more God-fearing than the Yishalmi, than the Talmud? Also, that person claims, why are you asking me to do above the letter of the law? I'm trying to just get by doing what the law says. You want me to go above the letter of the law? Tanya Selu, the Rebbe says all these claims, you could say, you want to know if you're going to get punished. You want to know if God's going to love you. He wants to give you a Yashar Koyach. You'll get the Yashar Koyach. You go straight to heaven. Nice. But hey, mitzadak balsa secha, that's limitations. Koil gam secha kedusha, even if it's holy, but we know where it's coming from. In Chassidus it says, Chassidus doesn't dislike a lot of things, and many things at all. One thing it doesn't like is a fool, or a person who tries to pretend like they're a fool, or to pretend like they're, what do you want from me? And why are you blaming me? That Chassidus doesn't appreciate that attitude. So if you want to fool yourself, good, you'll get by. No one's gonna know. You have a beautiful place in heaven. The Rebbe said like this: my father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, said once, Sheba America, talking about the American attitude of life, there's a disease called menmeg. I'm allowed to do something. Mutter, I'm allowed, right? You ask me why I'm doing this, I'm allowed. The other Rebbe says the opposite. My father-in-law said many times, there's a saying from Chassidim that's the opposite of what the attitude of I'm allowed to. What you're not allowed to do, or you should not do, surely you shouldn't do it. And what you may do, you don't need to do it. Not everything you're allowed to do, you have to do it. Like it says in Hebrew, Masha Asr Asr, if it's forbidden, forbidden. Masha Murta, just because it's allowed, doesn't mean you have to indulge in it. When I was growing up as a young boy in Crown Heights, there's an old chassid from the old country. We used to bring the whole night just on that line. Well, derech mashakasiv, like it says, she'ama oretz asur lechel basar.
When your parents moved to Seattle, it was like in the 70s, maybe?
72.
Yeah, so I remember when they came. So you were already how old? I didn't know
I wasn't born. I was born in Seattle.
Yeah, right.
I was born in Seattle. So it says like this. So, and like it says, Valderech Mashakazav, as it says.
Yeah, I studied with your father at University of Washington.
Yeah,
exactly.
So it says, like it's brought down in the Talmud. Talmud Pesachim says that Ama Oretz Asher Lechel Basar. It's a very weird law. It says that a simpleton, a person who's an ignorant person in the law, should not eat meat. It's not forbidden to eat meat. There's nowhere does it say it's forbidden, but it says it's forbidden for that person to eat meat. Why? It's not like a person who's not a halachic scholar should not eat meat and it's forbidden halachically. Then if it was totally us or forbidden, it'd be held by the forces of evil. You're not saying that. He wouldn't even be able to make a blessing on it. If a simple person chooses to eat meat, it's not held by the evil forces. And if and surely a person who's ignorant of the law is who eats meat must make the blessings. Sorry?
Too bad Shimon isn't here for this.
Yes. It has to make a bracha from before he's in the East Coast. It has to make a bracha before and afterwards. So what does it mean in the Talmud that says that a person who's a simple person or not simple, but an ignorant person should not eat meat? If you're a simple person, maybe it's better you don't eat meat. In Chassidus, in the Maimer, hold on, Aaron. The Maimer explains the reason is because meat gives energy. And if you in that energy you may use in the wrong way. Yes, Aaron.
I was told that when we got the Torah, there was a concession because before that, except for a few times before the Torah where people ate meat, we didn't eat meat. We were vegetarians for the most part.
Yeah, so it's not a contradiction to that. When we got the Torah, we were given the laws of shechita, of slaughtering, and we were allowed to eat meat. What he's saying is not what you're allowed to eat, but what you shouldn't eat. Because again, like Chassidus explains, meat gives a lot of energy. The Gemara has a story. Someone said a very good idea in the study hall, and he said that's because I didn't even eat well. Had I eaten a piece of meat in the morning, I would have given a much more interesting or deep idea. So we know meat gives energy, and the problem is that the Chassidus says that the simple person doesn't, because they're simple, don't use Torah properly. They use that energy for things that maybe they are prohibited or maybe not in the way of Torah or in the line of holiness. So it's more like a suggestion. Better don't eat meat. Again, I'm not saying that's practice, right? We don't see that anyone who says I'm a simple person, I'm not going to eat meat. A person who's holding that level is usually already on the level themselves. But it doesn't mean I'm telling you what the Rebbes is quoting what the Talmud says. It's Pesachim. See, the Rebbe didn't explain it right here. That the Rebbe says, what is the explanation? It's brought down in Chassidus that she'ikar ha'achilahi. Why does a person eat? Right, the person eats. So why does the person eat? So that in Chassidus, it's brought down that a person eats so that. Hold on a second. The whole thing closed down over here.
While you're looking for something, say one thing. Someone told us that the reason you eat is so that you can do God's will and perform the mitzvahs, so you get energy.
Oh, exactly. So that's what he's going to say over here. So hold on. So what he says is that Vasbar Mavur b'Chassidus. It says in Chassidus she'ikir ha'achila, that the idea of eating he loy litzarech adam. It's not just a person should eat shikabel mehamaychel, that the person should take from the shoot shari adam medarganas yisrael maychel. I mean, the person also has word of God that created the person. So why does the person eat food? It's it's for the food. A person has to elevate the food. The food is always waiting for a person to elevate it. Means the person himself. Chassidus has two views. One view is that there's sparks in the food that is high, that we've learned this many times, that is higher than the person, because it's the sparks of tohu, the worlds of chaos. Therefore, a person has to eat, whereas food doesn't need a person. I mean, it may need a person to plant it or to help it, but an animal in theory will never need a human if it's in the wild and has grass or whatever it needs to eat. It doesn't need a human. But a human needs vegetation or animals. So, but that's one thing Chassidus says because there's sparks in the animals or in the food, the vegetation that's higher. And there is another view in Chassidus is that the food wants to be elevated. That in that process, it's a relationship. It's not just that we're taking from the food. We're also elevating the food, but in order to elevate the food, we need to use the energy in a positive way. And therefore, the Rebbe says the food is Kadesha Adam Yavar V'Alis Maichel. The food is waiting to be elevated by the person when he consumes it or she consumes it. And therefore, the person is waiting for the food to eat him. You know, you have to know when a mother or a stay-at-home dad is cleaning the house or preparing supper or preparing the lunches in the morning and takes a nibble of food, that's holiness because that's you're bringing up a Jewish family. So, and the food is waiting for you to be part of that little nibble, to be part of the elevation. My father told the story about his father. Who's his father? The Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe of Chabad. That once the previous Rebbe, one time he used a fork to pick up a piece of food, and the food fell off the fork. So he laughed and he said, the food doesn't want to be elevated yet. Meaning to say that the Rebbe Rashab, when he's eating food, he's conscious that the idea of eating food is to elevate it. So the food doesn't want to be elevated, doesn't want to be elevated. So why does the food want to be eaten? Not to feed the person and doing something that has nothing to do with holiness. Again, holiness is a big there's a big circle there. Doesn't mean to run right and have to learn a piece of Gemara. That's also good. But anything that enhances the Torah, this Torah study, or enhances the Torah life is part of holiness. So but it has to be conditional. That's not just about your own wants. To do what the food wants. The food wants you to be elevated when you eat. Wants you to use its energy for positive things.
Don't we, it's saying as if there's a consciousness, intelligence in the food.
Why not?
An intent in the food. Well, I don't know. Do we believe that in general?
Why not? Why not? Maybe not an intelligence on levels that we understand. Why should there not be intelligence in the food, especially in the chayos and the animals?
But that's a very elevated idea, though, that the food is so intelligent that it wants to be eaten for God's sake. I mean,
absolutely.
I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
No, why not? Everything is a creation of Hashem. Yes, Aaron.
I'm going to bring this. You don't have to believe it, but in some Sephardic magazine, the Community, that's what it's called. It's in Brooklyn. They had an article years ago about food wincing, the vegetables wincing when you cut it and everything. So, believe it or not, they have some kind of feeling. But the other thing that I wanted to say was that's why we have to say the blessings, because that will elevate.
Yes, so you're right. The blessings is part of the elevation, but the food wants more than that. The food says yasher koyach for the blessing, but don't use the blessing and use the energy for something. He wants you to use the energy also for something positive. Blessing is the initial step of the elevation, but the food wants more.
Also, one last thing, I was told that's why, especially if you go to Chabad's house, they always have a lesson during the meal.
Oh, exactly. You should have a different Torah at the setting of the meal. Absolutely, it's all part of that. So, the person is just eating for their own desires. So, it's just about you. You only want to get from the food, but you don't want to give back to the food. So then he says, not only are you not elevating the food, the food brings you down. The food needs to be elevated. The food the food is not going to stay pariv in between. Either it gets elevated with you, or it brings you down to its level of food of an animal. So the person gets brought down by the food. And then the food is also upset because he caused a descent because he caused the person to stumble, and therefore the Gemara says, don't eat the meat. If you don't know how to elevate the energy of the meat, better to stay away from it. The meat doesn't want you, and you don't want the meat, really, because you're going to just bring the meat, you're going to be brought down by the meat, and the meat's not going to be happy with that, so just avoid it. That's what the Gemara is saying, the Rebbe says. Like my father said, This is another idea, Sharna, even more than food. And when a person walks on the street, when a person walks on the street, they should be thinking Torah thoughts or holy thoughts. Each person on their level. Chassidus, a person who knows Chassidus should think Chassidic ideas. Gemara, Talmud, Mishnayos, a Mishnah and Yaakov, a story from the Gemara. Say a little Chumash Tilim. The Rebbe was always talking. The Rebbe never. I grew up like that. My grandfather, when he went to shul, never just walked to shul. He always was saying either Mishnayos or davening. V'im lav, and if a person walks in the street, and when they're walking, they're not doing something holy. Oimeres laya evan, the stone tells the person, goylam. Goylam is like a, everyone knows the golem. Bulach, like a you piece of earth. Madu in who gave you permission to walk on me? You walking on the stone? Who gave you permission to walk on me? Do you want me to walk on you? Ki afsha adam hu nali yosim evan, even though the person is greater than the stone. A person who speaks is greater than a person who's has no movement or growth, even a domem. What makes you greater than the stone? Is you have intellect. Are you using it? You should be living a life based on intellect. When a person's thinking foolish thoughts and is not acting like a human should act, you're not doing your job. So the stone says, my job is to be part of the pavement. So I'm doing my job. Are you doing your job? You want to step on me? Then the stone says to the person, why are you stepping on me? Who gave you permission to step on me? If you're going to learn Torah, so then I fulfill my purpose and you fulfill your purpose. I made a path for you and you're doing what you should be doing, studying and thinking Torah. But if you're just thinking thoughts and I have to be a support for that, the Rebbe says after all this, so the person says, okay, I hear what you're saying, that we always have to have elevation, we always have to have holiness. But the question may ask itself, I know that there's things that are forbidden from Torah. Torah says it's forbidden. If Torah says it's permissible. If I'm allowed to do it halachically, where does it come from, this Hasidic idea that if it's permissible, I still shouldn't do it? The Torah says it's permissible. So he says, the answer is, so this is the contradiction of the concept. A person has to use their max seichel, right? So the stone says to the person, you're a seichel, you're a person of intellect, use your intellect. You have to use your max intellect, and when you reach the max, don't retreat backwards or stay there. Go beyond it. Means not to go. It means the Rebbe says, don't stop at your seichel when your seichel says, but it's permissible. And you want me to get even holier? Why should I be holier than what the Torah says? So the Rebbe says, the answer is, you can't have an intellectual argument with yourself once you reach the max. Then you have all kind of questions. Kushas mi Bavli, you could quote a Talmud from the Bavli, Kushim Yishalmi, a Talmud of the question from the Yishalmi, Kayetzeba, etc. This is what Avraham Avinu teaches us. You have to go and accept the yoke and go into Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. First, you start off with just accepting the yoke. This is the way it has to be. Yes, I know you want to do it, and you say the Shulchan Aruch lets me do it. The Torah wants you to be holier than that. And you say, why? Just do that. That's like accepting. Be an Eved, be a servant. And sometimes it demands even that you have to just not accept the yoke, but you have to actually have self-sacrifice. Like it's explained in the Chassidus. Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. Page 72. Pirusha, what does it mean self-sacrifice? Doesn't mean that you're going to burn at the stake. Self-sacrifice means Pirusha Mesiras Haratzon. Give what you want. You have a want, give that over to God. Ki nefesh pirushay ratzin. What is a nefesh? Nefesh is a want. Koil gam mesiras haratzon to kedusha. Even your holy wants that comes sometimes could be that you. For instance, what's a holy want? A holy want could be I want to learn myself. Why do I have to learn someone else? Shizuhi haratzon hamiti shal Yehudi kipsakt in Rambam. A Jew really always wants to do what the Torah says. Hanu lotzes mi kol hagbalas afilo hagbalas kedusha. A person has to go out of all their boundaries, even holy boundaries. Ubahad gashi yisayir bizman hagas. And this is most important in the time that we're in. Why is it most important in the time when we're in? When a person is in the time of gullus, of exile, you're in a crisis situation. And in a crisis situation, you can't walk out of. You have to do something drastic to get out of a crisis situation. We in the time of exile. We didn't behave perfectly. Because of our sins, we were exiled from our land. You can't just use your logic to get back in. You used your logic to get out. But in order to fix that, you can't just, okay, I'm back. You have to do something extra. You have to give away your want to fix the problem. With that strength, we go through. It's a golus, we get through the golus, like it says in Tanya, the Tam, why did Moshe Rabbeinu command the generation that went into Eretz Yisrael, Likres Krishma Pamayim, that you have to read the Shema twice a day, in the morning and the evening? Moshe said, in order to live as a Jew, you have to accept the yoke of Hashem, of heaven, with self-sacrifice. Again, not to the point of necessarily dying, but living for God, giving over your wants for God. But that's only, Moshe gave it to us in potential, because we weren't faced with the challenges. But it wasn't actual. When we're in the time of exile, we need Mesiras Nefesh B'Poil, sometimes, unfortunately, in the physical sense, and a lot of times in the spiritual sense. And the fact that proof of it is that there's levels of self-sacrifice that were revealed in the times of exile that we haven't seen in the times of the temple. Self-sacrifice the Jews did throughout history, especially in the times of the destruction of the second temple. Now we go back to Avram. When by Avram again, Avram was told about the Golus before he left his father's home. The vision of exile was when he was 70. So the Gemara says in Sanhedrin. When it started by Avram his Golus, he left his home. He left his comfort. I mean, simply said, he was at home, lived with his family, with his relatives, and he was doing his thing. And Hashem said he has to go into Galus. Lech Lecha. You're going into Galus means to get out of your limitations. And only through that.
Yeah. I thought Galus was when specifically leaving the land of Israel.
No, in general, the idea of Galus is to be goyal, to leave we have Galus in Eretz Yisrael also. People would have to go to Galus when they killed someone by mistake. There was people in times not too long ago, a few hundred years ago, people would accept on themselves willingly Galus. I mean, they were in Galus, they lived in Europe, right? And like the holy Rebbe Melech Lezhensk went with his brother Rebbes for years. They traveled, they left their home and they traveled without a name tag. No one knew who they were. And they just had to live off the kindness of people. The people used to practice Galus. So I should be talking about a personal Galus, not the general Galus. So here he says, God tells him, Lech Lecha, go out of your gvalis, go out of your limitations. You want to get to the eretz, to the rotzain. The word eretz means also rotzain. How do you get to the rotzain? Go out to the world. Even though like Rashi says, when a person travels, it lessens three things. Lessens your money, lessens your ability to have children, lessens other things. So God promised him, nevertheless, God told Avram, even though you think that your travels are going to cause you to be less, specifically there, you're going to have a family. He didn't have a family, he didn't have children in where he lived. So it's not going to be weakened. That's when your name is going to be great. The Kayal Shem Havaya means not just his name, but the name of Hashem that's connected to the name of Avram. Shmoya Atzmi, the essence. Until you'll be able to reach the level of circumcision. They revealed the great lights. She's Kalusam Hi Inyan Shaleda, that's as if he has another. He's been reborn again. I want to wish everyone good Shabbos and B'ez Hashem, see you next Sunday night for those who joined the Torah Or class. Laila Tov.
Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos.
I hope to have Wi-Fi though.
Me'ez Hashem.
When I stop in a hotel or something.